The woman's car was still in the lot. That was the first thing Pete noticed when he walked out after. Dex was already gone down the street around the corner out of sight. Craig had gone back into his office. The other guys had gone back to work the way people go back to work after something happens that nobody wants to talk about. But the Honda Civic was still there, engine off, windows up. And inside it, the old woman in the cotton jacket was sitting very still, looking at nothing in particular, her hands folded in her lap. Pete stood at the garage entrance for a moment. Then he went back inside, found his phone, and dialed a number he had saved 2 years ago and never used. 5:45 every morning. That was when Dex Calloway's day started. Not because of an alarm, because his body had learned the hour and stopped needing one. Coffee first, then the lunchbox. Willa's sandwich went in with the crusts cut the way she liked it since she was 5 and had never asked him to stop. A note on the refrigerator bus, money in the left drawer. Every morning. Not because Willa forgot, because Dex needed to know he had done at least one thing before the day started asking things of him. He was at the garage by 6:50. Nobody required this. The posted start time was 7:30, but the shop opened better when someone had already checked the equipment, made the coffee, swept the overnight grit from the floor. Pete arrived at 7:15 every day and found the coffee already made, and said nothing about it, and drank it. 7 years. Same sequence. Neither of them had ever mentioned it. The work itself Dex did without drama. An engine was a problem with a solution. You found the solution. You applied it. You moved to the next one. He was not the fastest mechanic in the shop. That was Pete, who could pull a transmission in under 40 minutes on a good day. But Dex was the most consistent, and consistency at a garage is worth more than speed, because speed makes mistakes, and mistakes come back. Willa had given him the wrench on his birthday 14 months ago. Small thing, consumer grade, the kind sold in gift sets at hardware stores. She had used 3 months of her allowance to buy it separately, not as part of a set, because she had seen him use a wrench that size and wanted him to have one that was his. Best mechanic was stamped into the handle in the slightly uneven way of something mass-produced that was trying to feel personal. He used it every day. Pete had asked once why he didn't use something better. Dex had not answered. Pete had not asked again. The Honda Civic pulled into the lot at 9:47. Dex saw it from under the Silverado. He was working on tires that were older than they should have been, an exhaust system held together by optimism. He slid out and wiped his hands. The car was a 2003, maybe 2004. The lower right corner of the passenger door had gone to rust. The engine had been running rough from the moment it turned into the lot. He could tell by the idle, the slight shudder at stop. He knew before he lifted the hood what it was going to be. He lifted it anyway. The woman who stepped out was in her early 70s. Cotton jacket, flat-soled shoes. She moved carefully, not from pain, from the deliberateness of someone who had learned that careful movement is cheaper than a fall. She looked at the hood, and then at Dex. "I know it's not happy," she said. "It'll tell me what's wrong," Dex said. "Give me a few minutes." She stood back and watched him work, not in the way some customers watched, anxiously looking for signs of being cheated. She watched the way a person watches something that interests them. After a while, she said, "How long have you been doing this?" "Since I was 17. He didn't look up. "My uncle had a shop. He needed help. I needed money. And now I need money for different reasons." She smiled at that. Not a polite smile, a real one, the kind that uses the whole face. "Do you like it?" Dex straightened up, looked at the engine, looked at her. "I like that things either work or they don't. There's no argument about it." The compressor on the air conditioning unit had seized. The part itself wasn't expensive. The labor was standard, and the part could be sourced by afternoon if he called now. He told her the number. She listened without flinching or bargaining, which was unusual enough that he noted it. "Let me start on it," he said. "Probably have you out of here by lunch." She nodded and went to sit in the small waiting area. 2 plastic chairs and a table with magazines nobody had updated in 2 years. Dex went back to work. Craig came out of his office, once looked at the Civic, went back in. The morning continued. At 11:30, Dex was finishing up. He ran the AC. Cold air came through the vents for the first time in what the woman said had been 8 months. She stood beside the car and put her hand in front of the vent and kept it there. "That's it," she said. "That's it." She reached into her bag, looked more carefully. The search went on long enough to become something other than searching became the realization of something. She looked up at him. "I've left my wallet at home." Not frantic, stating a fact. "I'm so sorry. I can come back this afternoon." Dex looked at the car, looked at her. The math of it was straightforward. She was not a person who manufactured this kind of excuse. Her face was wrong for it too. Steady to genuinely embarrassed in a specific way that performed embarrassment never quite managed. And there was the hand in front of the vent. 8 months without air conditioning. She had not been waiting on the repair for lack of caring. "Don't worry about it," he said. She looked at him. "I can't let you." "It's done. Drive carefully." He went back to the Silverado. Behind him, he heard her get into the Civic. Heard the engine turn over cleaner now, not perfect, but better. Heard the car idle for a moment longer than necessary, before it backed out of the lot. Craig's office door opened. He had been watching through the window that faced the lot. "What did you just do?" Not a question. Dex kept his hands on the Silverado. "What did you just do?" Craig said again, louder. Coming out of the doorway now into the shop floor, Pete's movements under the pickup at the next bay went very still. The 2 other guys found things to look at that were not Craig or Dex. "She didn't have her wallet," Dex said. "So you called me. So you told her to come back. So you did something other than just hand over a repair for free." Craig's voice was getting louder by the sentence, not from anger exactly, or not only anger. There was something else underneath it, something that needed the volume to hold itself up. "Do you know what our margin looks like right now? Do you have any idea what the last 2 quarters, she didn't have her wallet?" Dex said again. "That's not our problem." It was $112. "That's $112 we don't have." Craig was pointing now, at Dex at the lot at the door the Civic had gone through. "I have been carrying this shop on decisions other people won't make, and you're out here running a charity with my inventory and my labor." "Your father's shop," Pete said, quietly, from under the pickup. Nobody responded to this. Craig's color changed. "You're done," Craig said to Dex. "Today? Right now." The shop went quiet in the specific way of a room where people are present, but have decided not to be. Dex set down the socket wrench he was holding, reached into the front pocket of his coveralls, took out the small wrench best mechanic 14 months of use, and held it for a moment. Then put it in his pants pocket, removed his coveralls, folded them over the back of a chair. Not neatly, just folded the way you fold something when you're trying to be orderly about a thing that isn't orderly. "Thank you for the 7 years, he said to Craig. Craig said nothing. His jaw moved. Nothing came out. Dex picked up his jacket from the hook by the door and walked out. 3:15. The apartment was empty the way it was only empty between the time Dex got home and the time Willa got off the bus. He did not go to the couch or the table. He went to the kitchen and then did not do anything in the kitchen, just stood there for a moment, and then slid down to sit on the floor with his back against the lower cabinet. The linoleum was cool. He could see the underside of the table from this angle. There was a piece of tape on the underside of one of the chairs. Willa had put it there when she was 6, for no reason she had ever explained. He sat there. The list formed without him trying to form it. Rent was due in 18 days. Willa's school supplies needed replacing before the end of term. His mother in Fresno needed the monthly transfer. He sent not much, but consistent, and consistency was the part that mattered. He had enough saved to cover 2 months, maybe 3 if he was careful. After that, the math stopped working. He could hear the building around him. Someone's television 2 floors up. Traffic on the street outside. The refrigerator doing what refrigerators do. At 3:42, the key turned in the lock. Willa came in, dropped her backpack, looked at him on the floor, did not say anything. Went to the kitchen, to the cabinet above him, to the shelf where they kept the instant noodles, the sound of water running, the sound of the kettle. She moved around him without asking him to move. 10 minutes later, she came around the cabinet and set a bowl on the floor in front of him and sat down across from it with her own bowl. They ate. The noodles were too salty the way instant noodles always were. The kitchen floor was harder than it looked. Outside, the afternoon traffic continued. "Bad day," Willa said. "Complicated day." She nodded. Ate. Did not push. The ability to not push was something she had had since she was very small. Dex didn't know if it was temperament or learned or some combination, but it was there, and he was grateful for it every time. "Are we okay?" she asked. "We're okay," he said. And then, because she deserved more than reflexes, "I lost the job. But we're okay. I'll figure it out." She looked at him, looked at her noodles, looked at him again. "The job at Morrow's." "Yeah." She processed this for a moment. Pete's still there. Pete's still there. "Good," she said, like that was the important part. Maybe it was. May Sutherland sat at her desk at 11:17 that night and looked at Pete's number on her phone. He had called her that afternoon 4 minutes to the point. He had described what happened without editorializing, which she appreciated. He had told her about the wrench. He had told her about the folded coveralls. He had told her about the 7 years. Then he had said, "You're looking for the right person. You just watched them fire him." And he had hung up. She had not called back. She sat with the phone and thought about Dex Calloway standing in a shop with his folded coveralls over a chair back and a wrench in his pocket saying thank you to the man who had just let him go. She thought about the 8 months of broken AC and the hand held in front of the cold air vent. She thought about sitting in the parking lot and watching him walk out of the lot and not saying a word. The reason she hadn't said a word was the reason she always gave herself. When she reviewed decisions like this, she needed to know the information was real. If she had stood up for him in that moment, if Craig had backed down because of who she was, she would never have known whether Dex Calloway was genuinely what he appeared to be, or whether he was simply someone who performed well when the stakes were manageable. The test had to have real consequences. The test had to cost something. That was the logic. It was sound logic. She had used it for years. She also knew that a man had gone home that afternoon to a child and a set of financial problems that she had the power to have prevented and had not prevented, and the logic did not entirely resolve that. She called Sandra. "Set up an interview," she said. "Don't use my name." The phone rang at 8:43 the next morning. Sutherland Trades Foundation. He didn't know the name. The woman on the line, Sandra, she said, was professional and specific. There was a position. His name had been referred by someone she couldn't disclose. Could he come in Thursday at 2? He looked at Willa eating cereal across the table. "Yes," he said. "I can come in." Willa looked up. He shook his head slightly later. She went back to her cereal. Thursday at 2. The building was 3 stories brick on a street of similar buildings. The sign out front was Small Sutherland Trades Foundation, with a logo that suggested tools without being literal about it. Inside, the receptionist was a woman in her 50s, with reading glasses on a chain. "Mr. Calloway," she said before he could introduce himself. "Mrs. May said you'd be coming." She looked at him. "She's rarely wrong about people." He didn't know what to do with that sentence, so he filed it and moved on. The first part of the interview was with a man named Thomas, Program Director, 30s, a directness Dex appreciated. Technical questions first. What did he know about diesel versus gas diagnostic approaches? What were the most common misdiagnoses he had seen? What would he do differently if he were teaching someone with no prior mechanical knowledge versus someone who had learned incorrectly and needed to unlearn? The person who learned wrong is harder, Dex said, because the wrong thing works enough of the time. You have to get them to see why it'll fail them eventually. Thomas made a note, and someone with no knowledge at all, no habits to break. Dex thought about it. You can start with what's actually true. That's easier. Thomas made another note. Then the door behind Dex opened. He did not need to turn around to know. The particular sound of those flat-soled shoes on a floor was already in his memory. He turned around. Cotton jacket. Same one. She came around the table and sat across from him without ceremony, the way a person sits in a chair they sit in every day, because it is their chair. She looked at him with the directness she had used in the garage, not challenging, just present. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Thomas quietly excused himself. Dex looked at the nameplate on the desk. May Sutherland board chair. Looked at her. Looked at the nameplate again. The AC, he said. Yes. The wallet. Yes. He sat with that. You set that up. The wallet, no. She folded her hands on the table. I genuinely forgot it. That part wasn't planned. A pause. But I stayed to see what you would do. That part was. And Craig. I watched. I didn't say anything. She held his gaze. I know what that cost you. Then why? She was quiet long enough that he understood the answer required care. Because I needed to know if the information was real, she said. If I had stopped it if Craig had backed down because of who I am, I would never have known whether what I saw in the shop was actually you or whether it was a performance. He looked at her. It cost me a job. I know. And 7 years of reference. I know that too. The room was quiet. Outside the window, the street continued at its usual pace. A delivery truck stopped. A bicycle went past. Then I'll tell you something that's actually true, Dex said. I didn't fix the car because of a test. I fixed it because she had gone 8 months without AC, and she was embarrassed about the wallet, and she had done nothing wrong. He paused. That's all it was. May Sutherland looked at him for a long moment. I know, she said. That's why I'm sitting here. He went home and didn't tell Willa right away. They had dinner pasta Willa's turn to cook, which meant the pasta was slightly overdone, and the sauce was from a jar, and it was exactly what he wanted. He washed the dishes. Willa dried. The radio was on in the background, something neither of them was listening to. When the dishes were done, Willa put the towel on its hook and looked at him. The interview, she said. It went well. Are you going to take it? He sat down at the table. She sat across from him, the same positions as the noodle evening, but at the table now in chairs, which felt like progress. I want to ask you something first, he said. She waited. The woman whose car I fixed, the one who caused the situation at the garage. He chose words carefully. She was there today, at the interview. She runs the foundation. Willa's expression did not change in the way most people's expressions would change at a revelation like that. She just took it in. Was it a trick? She said. She wanted to see if what she saw was real. Willa thought about this. Was it what I did? Yes. Then it worked out. I still got fired. I know. She looked at the table. But you got fired for the right reason. That's different than getting fired for the wrong reason. He looked at his daughter. 9 years old. Overcooked pasta. A dish towel on a hook. He had not told her that, or taught her, that she had arrived at it by some process entirely her own. Do you need me to say it's okay? She said. No. Good. Because I think it already is. He met May Sutherland a second time, not at the foundation. He had called Sandra and asked for somewhere neutral. They met at a coffee shop on Clement Street, the kind that had been there long enough to be neighborhood furniture. He arrived first, ordered coffee for both of them. Pete had told him, Black, no sugar, which had required a call to Pete, which Pete had answered on the second ring and not asked why. She came in 3 minutes after him, looked at the cup waiting for her, looked at him. "Pete," he said. She sat down. "How is he?" "Still there. He says Craig is scared to lose anyone else now." Dex wrapped his hands around his mug. "Can I ask you something?" "Yes." "Your son," he had looked up the foundation, not the finances, just the history. The founding story. A man who had died at 38. A foundation built in the years after. Pete said he was a mechanic. May looked at the window. Traffic on Clement. A woman with a stroller. Ordinary Saturday afternoon. "He was," she said. "Diesel engines mostly. He loved the big ones." Dex nodded. "Let that settle." "That's not why I'm doing this," she said. "I want to be clear about that. I'm not looking for a replacement." "I know," he said. "I'm not asking because I think you are." He looked at his coffee. "I'm asking because I wanted to understand the shape of it. That's all." She looked at him. Something in her face shifted, not warmth exactly, but the territory adjacent to it. "He would have been annoyed by this whole process," she said. "The testing, the interview. He would have just talked to you, asked you what you thought about diesel diagnostics and decided in 20 minutes. Was he usually right?" "About people almost always." She picked up her coffee, held it without drinking. "That was the thing about him. He didn't need a lot of information. He read what was there." Dex reached into his pocket, set the small wrench on the table between them. She looked at it. "My daughter gave me this. Her allowance, 3 months of it." He turned it so the stamped words faced her. "She asks me most mornings if I'm using it. I tell her yes because I am, but also because I don't want her to think the things she does don't matter." May looked at the wrench. "I'll take the job," Dex said. "Not because of what happened at the garage, or because of the interview, or because I owe you anything. Because what you're describing, teaching people who don't have a way in, that's work worth doing. That's the only reason." She looked up from the wrench. "I know," she said. "That's the only reason I'm offering it." They sat with that for a moment. Outside, a streetcar went past with its particular metal sound. "One more thing," Dex said. She waited. "You never said you were sorry for not speaking up." She held his gaze. "No, I didn't. I'm not asking for it." He picked up the wrench, pocketed it. "I just wanted you to know I noticed." May Sutherland looked at him for a long moment. "I noticed you noticed," she said. And that it turned out was enough. The first class had 8 students, nobody over 25. Nobody with prior experience. That was a requirement, not a coincidence. Dex had asked for it specifically. Thomas had looked at him with something between skepticism and curiosity, and then written it into the program parameters. Day 1. Dex put an old engine block on the work table, said nothing. Let them look at it. Let the silence do what silence does in a room full of people who don't know what they're supposed to say. "What is it?" a girl near the back said finally. "What do you think it is? An engine. Part of one. Which part?" Nobody knew. Nobody pretended to. He counted that as a good sign. "Good," he said. "Nobody's learned the wrong thing yet." A kid at the far end of the table laughed, small, quickly covered. Dex looked at him, nodded once. That was enough. The first week was slow. The second week was less slow. By the third week, the girl near the back could identify 5 engine components, by feel with her eyes closed, which was 4 more than Dex had expected by that point, and 1 more than he'd managed himself when he was learning. On Friday of the 4th week, Dex sat in his car after the session ended and did not go anywhere immediately. The lot was mostly empty. The building was quiet. He looked at his phone. A text from Willa, home yet hungry. He started to type, "Okay, on my way," which was what he always typed, then stopped, deleted it. Typed, Not yet. You okay? 3 dots. Then obviously. Are you okay? He looked at that for a moment. Then, yeah, actually. She sent back a thumbs up and nothing else. He sat in the lot a little while longer, not from sadness, just to let the thing that had shifted settle into something he could carry going forward. 6 months later, on a Thursday with no particular significance, Willa had a day off school and came with him to the foundation. She sat in the corner of the classroom with her homework while he taught. The students had learned by now that this happened occasionally and had stopped treating it as notable. Willa sat with her notebook and did not look up very often, and when she did, it was with the particular expression of someone who is listening to more than they appear to be listening to. At 3:15, when the session ended and the students were filing out, Dex looked up and saw May Sutherland standing in the doorway. She had not called ahead. She was in the cotton jacket flat shoes. She looked into the classroom without coming in, looked at the engine parts on the tables, the diagrams Dex had drawn on the whiteboard, the students sorting their bags and talking to each other. Willa saw her, put her notebook down, got up, walked to the door. Dex watched from across the room. He could not hear what they were saying. Willa said something. May looked at her, said something back. Willa's expression did not change the way most people's would. She just listened and then said something else, and May went very still in the way of someone who has been asked something they were not prepared to answer. Then Willa turned and went back into the room, went to the corner where the extra chairs were stacked, picked one up, it was almost as big as she was, and carried it to the doorway. Set it down next to where May was standing. She did not say anything. She went back to her corner, picked up her notebook, and resumed her homework. May stood at the doorway and looked at the chair, then into the room where Dex was erasing the whiteboard and the last 2 students were having an argument about valve timing that he would need to resolve in a minute. The afternoon light came through the windows at a low angle the way it came in October. It reached the work tables. It reached the chair in the doorway. May Sutherland sat down. Inside, someone asked Dex a question. He answered it, turned to the board, and drew something. Outside in the doorway, May sat and listened. Willa turned a page. The afternoon held everything in it. Without comment, the work, the light, the chair, the wrench in Dex's pocket that he had carried every day for 14 months and would carry tomorrow and the day after that, because Willa asked each morning if he had it, and he always did, and that was its own kind of answer given quietly without needing to be explained to anyone.